Hello, friends. Ted Wilcox here again to bring you into another thrilling chapter in our continuing saga of magic, mystery, and the American century. But before we begin, here's Charlie Pulcher with a brief review of our last episode.
Last time, staking out the Stanford Motor Inn, Mickey waited in the dark for a crooked deputy to make his move. When Pomponio finally showed, she didn't tail him. She boxed him in, gun drawn, and forced the conversation he'd been dodging all week. Inside the room, the truth came out. Pomponio wasn't hiding an affair, but his cousin Maggie, an investigative reporter sitting on a story no one wanted printed. Not 3, but 6 women had vanished, and the authorities knew who was responsible, a motorcycle club called the Demon Lords. At last, Mickey had a lead. But is she closing in on the hunters, or stepping into their sights? We'll find out now.
This is the Mythic Chronicles. Entry 1. Crime Wave.
Chapter 15. Mickey Gets Flashed. October 24th, 1951. Mickey eyed the Pomponio cousins as she slid into a chair and pulled out a cigarette case. "Mind if I smoke?" Then, not waiting for an answer, she lit up. "So," she continued after taking a long drag, "you were saying something about undead mythic leeches. There's only a few kinds of those, and only one that gets mislabeled. These demon whatevers, they're vampires?" Pomponio looked like he wanted to spit, but Maggie gave a tight nod. Mickey nodded back. "Makes sense," she said, exhaling smoke. "And you're both right. First, despite what the stories say, vamps are alive. If they were born human, they aren't mythic, and they're nothing like the actual undead. Believe me, I've seen what that looks like, and vamps aren't it. I'm familiar with several I'd work with again." She tapped ash into the tray. "That said, anyone who starts abducting women and nailing animals to doors," her voice dropped a degree, "they forfeit the distinction." Leaning back, smoke curling from her lips, Mickey said, "So why don't we sit down, agree to disagree, and keep answering my questions?" Both Pomponios looked properly chastised. She took another drag, noticing the slight tremble in her fingers. Talk of the undead always stirred things up. In the back of her mind, she heard the shrieking whistle of a train. "Not now," she told herself, glancing at Maggie. "So, you were saying?" Maggie nodded. "You've probably noticed there are a lot of bikers around here. Motorcycle clubs took off after the war, especially among vets. A lot of those guys came back with vampirism," she added, shooting Pomponio a look. "The MCs gave them somewhere to belong. Most are law-abiding, but some, like the Demon Lords, went outlaw." Pomponio picked up the thread. "They mostly operate out of East Palo Alto. Officially, they're bounty hunters. Even got citations from the mayor after taking down the pyromancers behind last summer's fires. Unofficially? Gun running, sex trafficking, extortion." "Lovely," Mickey said dryly. "And you know for a fact they're behind the abductions." "We haven't caught them in the act," Pomponio admitted, "but we found matching tire tracks at every scene. Sacramento lab confirmed their Harley-Davidson Ks fitted with CN Mark III Shield tires, military grade, nearly impervious to small arms fire, and not available to civilians." Mickey arched a brow. "So how does a fringe biker gang get their hands on that kind of gear?" Pomponio shrugged. "Same way they've stayed untouchable. Connections. When Grady opened an investigation, the governor's office told us to shut it down. Said pursuing the DLMC would interfere with a federal operation." "Sons of bitches," Mickey muttered. "So you buried it. Slapped a weak bounty on the case to make sure it died on the vine." Pomponio nodded. "That was the plan, until some crazy hunter with a 2-mile rap sheet waltzed in and called Sergeant Calhoun Dog Boy." Mickey chuckled. "Lucky for you, I've got debts to pay." She crushed her cigarette and shot Maggie a wink. So, she mused aloud, what's a bunch of so-called heroes want with these women anyhow? And why snatch them from right under everyone's nose? Even with muscle, they had to know it'd stir up heat. Doesn't add up. Pomponio glanced at Maggie, who gave them a slight nod to continue. Bliss, he said with a shrug. It changes people, deteriorates rational thought. We've been told to keep it under wraps, but it's becoming a real problem. And not just with mythics, but normal humans too. Bliss is bad medicine. It's spreading like wildfire around here. And the DLMC's a major reason. Word is, they're heavy users themselves. Mickey murmured, tapping her fingers against the table. She made a mental note to look into the drug's effects when she had the chance, then turned to Maggie. You said 6 women were missing. Why aren't all of them on the bounty board? More tampering? Things went quiet after I went into hiding, but I knew they weren't done. Why would they stop? They're untouchable as long as they keep it quiet. So I had Jeffrey grab every paper he could find while I laid low. It took some digging, but... She handed Mickey the articles and sat on the edge of the bed. The first, from the Oakland Tribune, covered a September 11th shooting in West Oakland, naming Elsa Sierva as a person of interest who vanished. The second, from the San Jose Star, reported Merida Tejan, a lab assistant from Alloy Valley, missing since October 8th. Both referenced motorcycle sightings near the scene. See? Maggie said. With the investigation buried and these outside county lines, no one connected the dots. They didn't stop. They just expanded their hunting grounds. Mickey scanned the articles again. It circled back to the same question she'd been chewing on earlier. So, why these women? What's the connection? Is there a connection? Maggie hesitated, biting her lip. You've got something, Mickey said. I think they're all native. Ohlone tribe. Mickey's brows lifted. Really? Maggie nodded. I confirmed it through the Ohlone Registration Center. Pretty big coincidence, isn't it, Ms. McFinn? Mickey considered. Targeted victims based on race wasn't new. If sex trafficking was involved, it could be as simple as demand meeting supply. She glanced between the cousins. What about you two? Any connection? They exchanged a glance, then shook their heads. Only in the broadest sense, Maggie said. But these are old Ohlone lands. Our tribes were scattered a long time ago. Mickey nodded. She knew how that felt. After a pause, she said, It's worth looking into. Nice work. Maggie's face lit up with her first genuine smile. Mickey returned it, lifting the clippings. You said 6 women. There are only 2 articles here. What about the last? That one didn't make print, Maggie said. But I've got a friend at the Examiner in San Francisco. Her contact at the SFPD said a girl was taken from a park in the Tenderloin about a week ago. A witness saw a guy on a motorcycle. Another native girl? I don't know yet, but the signs are all there. If you take tire samples from the scene, I'd bet they match the CN Mark IIIs. Mickey nodded. The who and how makes sense, but the why? What motivates a group of ex-soldier vamps with a rep for heroics to start snatching native women? It's not blood. Hells, you can buy that at the grocery store these days. She shook her head, bracing a hand on her knee as she stood. Well, protected or not, their behavior doesn't add up. I've got a contact in San Francisco, and a potential 6th victim. Might as well check out the abduction site. If I find samples, she might be able to confirm the match. And if all those ifs and maybes pan out... She shrugged and gave Maggie a small smile. We'll see. She turned to Pomponio. What do you say, Officer Pomponio? Your secret stays safe as long as this little powwow stays off the books. Pomponio nodded once. Good. Mickey headed for the door. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to see a gal about a gun. But the moment she opened it, bang! Something slammed into her chest like a freight train. She flew backward, crashed into the far wall, and collapsed to the floor. She barely registered Maggie's scream or Pomponio's shout. All she could focus on was breathing. Her vision swam. Darkness closed in. And a flash of white light tore through her mind. Mickey blinked. She was surrounded by nothing. Not darkness, not silence, nothing. It held her, close, comforting, like a lover's embrace. No pain, no fear, no guilt, just nothing. It was wonderful. She floated, untethered. Time lost all meaning. Then, from somewhere too close and impossibly far, a whistle shrieked. Flash! She stood in a sun-drenched field. Long waves of tan grass rolled over the hills, broken by dark green and reddish-brown shrubs scattered across rolling hills. Beyond them, rocky cliffs plunged into a deep blue sea. Flash! Back in the nothing. Floating. Weightless. But now, there was something. A pinpoint of light sparked in the distance. Small, but unyielding. It grew. Brightened. The first star piercing a night sky. She became aware of her body again. Arms, legs, breath held in stillness. She tried to move, but couldn't. The light expanded to the size of a baseball, then larger. It was closer. Coming straight for her. Flash! She was on the hill again. Beside her stood a man, tall, lanky, tan skin worn like sun-cracked leather. His face covered in black and white paint. His eyes, green and gold, stared into hers. They were familiar. He raised one hand and pointed at her heart. Flash! Back in the nothing. But this time, her feet touched solid ground. She still couldn't move. The light was closer now, the size of a basketball. It split into 3 beams. Headlights. A train. A black locomotive, massive and grinning with jagged metal teeth, tore toward her. Flash! Now atop a gleaming metal tower. A monolith rising from the heart of a shining river city. Flash! Another tower. Another city. Surrounded by desert this time. Endless and dry. Flash! A third tower. This one on an island. Bridges branching like ribs toward the mainland. Flash, flash, flash! A dozen more. Cities she recognized. Cities she didn't. Each skyline crowned with a similar tower. Flash! She stood beneath a vast rotunda. Ancient stone columns loomed, worn by time and ruin. Behind her, something pulsed. A green light, tainted and terrible. A force so immense it threatened to alter the entire world, tearing apart the very fabric of existence. She turned. Flash! Back in the nothing. Steel rails beneath her feet. The whistle screamed again. The train, black, snarling, ravenous, charged toward her. 50 yards away. But this time, she could move. She turned, started running. 40 yards. She sprinted. It gained. 30 yards. Faster. Legs pumping. Faster than she'd ever moved. 20. The roar filled her skull. She glanced back. The tracks had melted into quicksand. She was stuck. 10. She screamed. Flash! Mickey's eyes flew open. The motel ceiling swam above her. Somewhere in the distance, a motorcycle engine roared. Voices shouted. Her chest burned. I've been shot. She tried to breathe, but air refused to fill her lungs. Someone knelt over her. She felt blurry, frantic hands tugging at her blouse. She saw Maggie, terrified, pale, searching for the wound. The young woman ripped her blouse open, and air rushed back in. Mickey gulped it in with sudden, ragged gasps. With oxygen, the mind seemed to coalesce. The panic receded. She groaned, voice hoarse. Oh, damn it. That was my favorite blouse. Maggie sagged with relief, laughing through her tears. Are you okay? Mickey coughed. Dunno yet. Help me up. Maggie helped her sit. Flattened pellets, still hot enough to burn skin, clattered to the floor. The protective runes in her bra flickered, burned out and blackened, leaving only scorched lace and bruised skin. Pomponio burst back in, gun drawn. They're gone. He stopped cold, eyes locking on her torn blouse. Mickey scowled. You mind? Face reddening, he turned around. Maggie helped her stand. That them? Mickey rasped. The demon fuckers? Pomponio nodded, still facing the wall. Mickey turned to the window. Outside, dogs barked across the block, and beneath it all echoed the warbling howl of a lone coyote. Maggie stared at her, wide-eyed. How are you smiling? Because, Mickey said, grin sharp. Dangerous. I get to hunt some vampires.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Mythic Chronicles. If you're enjoying the journey, please consider rating and reviewing the podcast. Your words might help bring more mythics into the fold. To listen ahead, unlock bonus content, and gain access to VIP Discord roles and behind-the-scenes updates, check out our Patreon, or visit us at SeanTLaffertyBooks.com. I'm Sean. Thanks again for being here.